This week, we welcome back Shani Dodge and Roy Cohen from Vicarious. They will present a segment on vulnerabilities entitled Prioritize This, Prioritize That, Prioritize with context, including a live game for our live audience this evening. In the second segment, we welcome back Patrick Garrity, VP of Operations at Blue Mira, to talk about democratizing and SaaSifying the security operations. In the security news, Microsoft uses trademark law to disrupt TrickBot botnet. Barnes & Noble cyber incident could expose customer shipping addresses and order history. Zoom rolls out end-to-end encryption. Google warns of severe bleeding tooth vulnerabilities. Windows TCP/IP remote code execution vulnerability, in case you've been living under a rock lately. And a prison video visitation system exposed calls between inmates and lawyers. All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. Are you an enterprise dissatisfied with overpriced analytics software that can't keep up with modern data? If so, then GravWell is the solution for you. GravWell is an unstructured data analytics platform for enterprises who demand total data visibility across their network. GravWell lets your security team go beyond the SIM and fuse data sources to correlate and answer questions you didn't know needed to be asked. Go to gravwell.io/Security Weekly for an unlimited data trial and gain uncompromising visibility today. Want to be more thorough while also working faster? It doesn't matter if you're on the red or blue team, an augmented reality overlay can enable you to be more thorough and faster at the same time. No glasses, no goggles. Polarity delivers this superpower as an overlay on top of your existing workflow and tools. The free Community Edition connects to the data you care about to overlay the context you need to make informed decisions. Apply for early access today at securityweekly.com/polarity. The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM.
But first, let me introduce you to a man who should really trademark the Thanksgiving incident, Mr. Paul Asadoria.
Welcome, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. It's episode number 670, recorded October 15th, 2020, right here in G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. To my left, Mr. Larry Pesce. Larry, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Back in the studio this week. It's been a whirlwind couple of weeks, and
we completed another round of we have our own like headphone monitors. We can adjust our own volume in the headphones. We have mute buttons, cough buttons. It's great. It's great. Nice job, team. Let's see, remotely, Mr. Tyler Robinson.
Buenos noches, buenos dias, whichever it is.
Mr. Lee Neely is here with us. Lee, welcome.
Good to be here. Remain seated until the ride comes to a full and complete stop.
Lee, is your camera crooked, or is my new monitor crooked? No, I think it's your camera.
I think my camera got crooked. I'm going to try and adjust it.
Okay, we'll let you do that. Mr. Jeff Mann is here with us. Jeff, welcome. Remotely, I should say. Not with us in studio.
His camera's
I'm with you in spirit.
Yes. His camera is also crooked. That's just Jeff.
Oh, no, yeah, Jeff.
That's just me being crooked.
That's right. Let's see. A couple of quick announcements to get us started. Would you like to have all of your favorite Security Weekly content at your fingertips? Hear from our team, from Sam and Andrea. We have when we have upcoming webcasts and trainings. If you've got questions for our hosts or someone from the Security Weekly team, or just really wish you could hang out with the Security Weekly crew and community, you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast catcher, sign up for our mailing list, join our Discord server. All of those things, you go to securityweekly.com/subscribe and do all those things. Also find all of the shows on our network. Let's see. Roy is here with us. He is a cybersecurity expert with over 15 years of experience. He is did I get your title right? Founder and CEO? Is that your title, Roy?
Yeah, it is.
Founder and CEO
Shalom.
at Vicarious. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Shani Dodge is here with us. She has 10 years of experience as a cybersecurity researcher. Shani, welcome.
Hey, Paul. Great to be here.
Nice to have you both back on the show. I do want to mention, so we're trying something new, and I'm really thankful for both Roy and Shani for suggesting this. It's interesting, we were talking about doing something like this. So we're throwing caution to the wind, and we're just going to run, I called it a quiz. It's not really a quiz. It's more like a survey that we're doing for our live audience. So if you're listening to the recording, it's not going to happen in the recording. So if you're listening to this,
So sorry, so sad.
you should be listening
Suckers,
live.
You lose out.
Thursday nights, 6 p.m. Eastern. So we're going to use Kahoot to do a poll on about vulnerability prioritization. So you go to kahoot.it.
That's KAHOOT.IT. So KAHOOT.IT.
Or I did it on an app on my phone too, so they have apps as well. And then you're going to enter a PIN number, 8501909. I'll say that again. It is 8501909. It is in our Discord server in the PSW live chat channel. Is it a chat channel? Is that what you call it?
It is now.
Yeah, I'm right, using older. Anyway. So go do that, and then I'll let Roy and Shani kind of introduce that before we dive into doing the live poll, and they're going to show the results during the show. And please don't choose ridiculous. Like inappropriate. I mean, I'm not your dad, but you know what I mean.
But he may be your mom.
Could be. Roy and Shani, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. We wanted today to discuss about how companies are managing, the full stack of vulnerabilities that are kind of being bombarded at. Just a recap for the previous sessions. We discussed about the growing numbers of vulnerabilities that there are. Over 1,000 vulnerabilities are being disclosed every month. We just heard a couple of new interesting ones, Zero Logon and others. And it's very tough for companies. Some of our clients, some of the people that we speak with are kind of struggling with the sheer amount of issues they need to encounter on a daily basis. We don't have enough people, not enough resources, and spending the time for patching and updates is something which is kind of hectic. Just a quick survey that we saw by SolarWinds shows that somewhere between 50% to 70% of IT personnel is allocated to these tasks. And patching is not only about upgrading the version of the vulnerable application. It's also about, before you need to do some prep, you need to check the updates, you need to validate that. And afterwards, you need to do the cleanup. Sometimes patches fail, it happens. So we need to we need to do work afterwards. So it's something which is quite expensive for companies, as we all know. Just the other week, I spoke with one of our clients, and he told me that before, when he was doing like a scanning with single vulnerability scanner, he basically prioritized based on everything which is got a CVE score of 8 and above. This is something which was a candidate for an update. Then he basically updated from 8 to 9 because there were so many of them. So for today's session, we wanted to discuss about we must have a better way to focus on our tasks and prioritize
totally a better way, because Roy, I believe 8.8 is the CVSS score for the latest TCP/IP vulnerability in ICMPv6 on Windows systems, which Microsoft says remote code execution. Others say it's going to take a little time to get there, that it's blue screen to death. I mean, you should just patch it. But if you're only doing a certain number and above, right, then like what if it's 9.0 and above? And then it comes out as 8.8, right? And if you're doing 8.0 and above, like what is a 7.9? Does that, like, really? Is that, I when I worked in vulnerability management for Tenable, right? Even that's not, a secret, right? We would have some folks suggest that, like, oh, this is our strategy. Like, what do you think? And I'm like, that's not, I had to find very nice ways to say, I don't necessarily buy into that, that whole thing, because it's so much more complex than that. I shouldn't say complex, but much more meaningful ways to prioritize vulnerabilities. Also, Roy, to your point, I'll back you up like 1,000% on the laundry list of things that can go wrong with patches. Like maybe they're there, maybe you missed systems, maybe it didn't reboot, maybe it was that version of the DLL, but there's another copy of the DLL somewhere, another copy of the software. Like I used to go through the whole laundry list when I worked at Tenable with folks about discovering the vulnerabilities, and they're like, well, my team came back and said they fixed it, but we're still finding it. It's because there's like another copy of the software, and there's like a million use cases like that. So back to you.
Even if you're fixing those 8, 9s, and 10s too. Oftentimes, attackers are, keying together, chaining together multiple small or low-level events or misconfigurations that may not even be exploits. So at that point, like those patching and prioritizations, like you said, is a long laundry list that may or may not help.
Yeah, and web apps are a great example of that, right? Because they're like, oh, it's just a file upload, but you couple that with authentication bypass or directory traversal or cross-site scripting. You start combining some of those together, and it's game over for your web app.
Yeah, exactly. And this, eventually we discussed here like about the score, like an 8 or a 9. We actually saw like a 4 got exploited in the wild. So It really depends. It's kind of out of context. And this is exactly what we're going to discuss today. And I will hand it over to Shani to elaborate.
Thanks, Ray. So yeah, all those information that you just mentioned make me, think, do we really need to put thought into the method we're choosing when we're prioritizing? Meaning, how do we give a score for every vulnerability, right? So as you just mentioned, we can put time and effort into patching a vulnerability that scores more than 9, but if we look into how this vulnerability is being expressed in our configuration, we can find out that it doesn't really can be harmful for us, and the risk is quite lower than other vulnerabilities. And this could be like kind of a false positive where we put the time and effort into it, but actually it won't be very harmful, right? And on the other hand, we can miss out some low-level vulnerabilities, like with a 6 or 7 scored, that will be very harmful. And because we don't treat them, our organization is always continuing to be exposed to this risk, right? And after that, I had this thought in mind, I first asked myself, what methods really exist today? So what are the methods that we can use in order to prioritize these vulnerabilities? So the common basic method that is very, very popular is the CVSS method. This is CVSS stands for the Common Vulnerability Scoring System. And let me share my screen with you. I would love to show you that. 1 second, please.
Yeah, and Roy, I believe what you're about to show is something you showed me a month or so ago. That MITRE makes available some of these tools to basically customize some of these scores. And I'm like, I never knew that. I'm like, that's really actually kind of cool.
Yeah, it's quite a neat utility to basically help you to rank the vulnerabilities based on the different properties. So basically you get a vector. There are like various properties for this vector, but there is a vector compound of different characteristics of the vulnerability that eventually when you set them correctly, you get a score of the vulnerability, which we just discussed, like an 8 or a 9. So this is exactly what Shani is going to show.
Excellent. I also forgot to read your landing page at the top of the segment. Vicarious is a sponsor. You can find out more at securityweekly.com/Vicarious. We'll talk a little bit about that more at the end of the segment. But prioritization is one thing you're actively helping your customers with and have stuff in your product. So.
Right. So if we'll go back to the CVSS scoring method, so we can see that all the characteristics that are combined in order to create the score are grouped into 3 groups: the base group, the temporal group, and the environmental group, where the base group refers to the characteristics that are constant over time and environment, such as the privileges that are required in order to execute the exploit. The temporal group refers to characteristics that are change over time. For example, the exploit code maturity. Right, when a vulnerability is published, they might not be an exploit yet, but later in the year, it might be published. And the environmental group refers to characteristics that depend on the specific environment that is being attacked. For example, what impact would the attack have? So saying that, I want to show you the calculator. So for every vulnerability that is published, the security team can sit down, analyze the characteristics, and choose and put in the information, right? And then we will receive a score between 0 and 10, where it's enough to enter only the base score characteristics, so that are constant over time and environment, and not to add the temporal and environmental characteristics. If we do add them, our score would be adjusted. And so
Shani, are you on a specific CVE to do this?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I'll get to it in a moment.
Okay.
But
sorry, I got excited. Never mind. Continue.
No worries. We have few CVs to demonstrate today. So
awesome.
Yeah. So, Roy just mentioned earlier that there's thousands of vulnerabilities, and, the security team can't really sit down and analyze every vulnerability that exists, right? So how can we gather this information about all the thousands of vulnerabilities? So luckily for us, the NIST organization provides the national vulnerability database that actually provide us for most of the vulnerabilities that exist, the base score. And just before I demonstrate a few vulnerabilities, I want to start with the poll. Are you ready for that?
Yes. So now we're going to go to Kahoot, and we're going to do a poll.
Right.
It says I'm in.
Oh boy.
Let's start the game.
Oh boy.
Oh,
It went from green to purple.
Yep, get ready.
We're very excited.
Question one.
Yeah, so just we saw the CVSS score. So when people refer to the CVSS score, what do they refer to? They actually refer to the base score published and updated by NIST, or maybe to the full CVSS score, the one that includes the temporal and environmental scores that need to be gathered, and updated all the time, and no one publishes them.
I wish I had studied.
So I'm very excited to see what would be the answer. Paul, what would be your guess?
I wish I had studied for this test. I would guess that most people refer to the base score published and updated by NIST.
Yeah, that's what I said too.
Are we supposed to answer in the correct way, or
C.
what we think people?
What
the scanner said.
What
The scanner result.
What you think? Yeah.
Yeah, what you think people refer to. Yeah, I know.
How much time do we have? 9, 8, 7.
Almost over.
And
Okay, yeah. So most of the people believe that people refer to the base score, right? And this leads me to my next question. What is the most common prioritization method that is used? Is it the CVSS base score? Is it the full CVSS score, or maybe another different method?
Now we get to bring in Nessus.
Well, I mean, all the vulnerability scanning tools, for the most part, will incorporate CVEs and CVSS scores in the vulnerability findings for most of the plugins.
All right, so we're only on question one, and this game thing is pretty neat. I like it.
This is question 2, but
Oh, sorry. So what did I say? What did I say? Question 3?
Larry's
Keep
got
up,
a 10
Larry, keep
second
up.
delay.
It's been a week.
Yeah,
It's
I hear you.
Yeah.
I don't think we need as long to answer, though. I'm kind of...
Some years are like that.
Okay, ready?
Yep.
Whoa, so most of the people use the CVSS base score. Okay, so
Yeah,
now
Suckers.
Wrong.
Wrong method. This is what you're saying. Let's try it out now. Okay, so I actually brought an example for us to play with and see how we can prioritize these vulnerabilities. So I chose 4 vulnerabilities, 2 on servers, 2 on desktops. The 2 vulnerabilities that are on servers have a base score of 9.8. The 2 desktops have vulnerabilities have a base score, one of 8.8 and one of a 6.5. And I've added here all the characteristics from the CVS.
If this was ASV scan findings, these would all have to be fixed. Thank you. This is your PCI public service announcement.
Yeah. Okay. So let's try it out. Let's try one of the vulnerabilities in the calculator, right? So what I really like about this calculator that we don't really need to remember by heart what the fields refer to, because there's like a short explanation that's really cool. So let's start with the base score, the one that is refers to the constant characteristics. So all these characteristics on the left actually refer to the exploitability of the vulnerability. The attack vector refers to how can we actually execute an attack. Is a physical attendance required? Do we need to log into the target machine or rely on user interaction, or maybe it's just remotely exploitable? So we'll choose a network, and then the attack complexity refers to information that needs to be gathered in advance in order to execute the exploit. Of course, as long as it's easier to exploit the vulnerability, the score would be higher, right? Now, the privileges required refer to privileges that we need to obtain in order to exploit, meaning admin user is high, just a local, basic user, or maybe no privileges at all. And user interaction, do we rely on the user to do some interaction in order for the exploit to be executed? And now, as we said, this is the exploitability of the vulnerability. And now we'll move to what happens. All these fields on the right is what happens in case a successful attack. So would the scope be changed in terms of the security authority that can be obtained? Confidentiality refers to the data. Sorry, all these 3 fields refer to the impact on data or asset as a result of a successful exploit. So the confidentiality refers to disclosing limited information, such as admin credentials, right? The integrity refers to changing the data as a result of a successful exploitation. And the availability refers to, for example, for an asset, a server that would be down because of this exploit. So I just entered all these characteristics from the first vulnerability in our example, and we received this 9.8 critical score. Right. So if we go back to here, we can, look a bit more into this data. And now I would like to proceed to the next question in the Kahoot and ask you guys, how would you prioritize based on this CVSS score? Ready for that?
Hell yeah.
We're ready.
Is this an internal scan or an external scan? Seriously.
That's an internal
What do you
scanner.
Okay.
Okay. So guys, how would you prioritize now?
Wait, is that my desktop or someone else named Paul?
That one's definitely yours for demonstration.
You wonder.
So what's your guesses now?
I'd usually
that's
prefer
all-
desktops personally, but that's just me. Less monitoring.
I hate multiple choice tests.
It's multiple guess.
Multi-guess. Let's just pick one and go on.
C. But is it A, B, C, or is it A, B, C? Is it horizontal or vertical? Oh, time's up.
Change my
I didn't-
answer. Damn it.
Okay, so let's look a bit on the answer. So you all said you'd stop either of them, and some said that they even won't patch the desktops, right? So
Wait, who
It's a
answered they
very
wouldn't patch my
interesting answer.
desktop? No one. No one did.
How am I going to compromise you? Never mind.
Oh wait.
Oh.
Well, two
Well,
two
you
wouldn't
said,
patch.
now you said about, you didn't say whether it was patched or not. You asked how it would be prioritized.
No, it's a good point, Lee.
When it comes to desktop patching, for me, that's a totally automated thing. On servers, it's more manual. So I'm going to prioritize the servers and the sweep for the desktops. will
Yeah,
take
but
care
which
of that.
server? Are you going to do server 1 first or server 2 first?
It's equal than or greater to.
Why? Why?
I'm going to
Server two.
Sorry, am I stealing? Hold on. Shani, am I stealing your thunder? Sorry, go ahead.
no, that's fine. I'm happy to hear all the answers.
Well, I mean, I would. You
Yeah,
could make
so
a case
yeah.
for server 2 over server 1 because I believe the CVSS number was lower, meaning it's an older vulnerability.
That's interesting what you're saying. So basically, you're saying that the score is lower because of the age of
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I agree. That's it, Johnny. You're now helping us with sysadmin patching.
I would have gone there, but remember in a previous segment we started looking up the sequencing of CVS numbers, and they're not sequential.
That's a good question. I actually don't.
Right.
Are they?
It's interesting.
Are
It's a good
they
point.
sequential?
Yeah, they are sequential.
They are.
Well, you are being allocated once
exactly.
you publish a CV, you're allocating a number. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily. Sometimes they give you the number, and then until it's getting published, it takes some time. But it's a good point.
It's a good point. Yeah, it could be that way, but it depends because as Roy's saying, like if you're Microsoft, for example, they get allocated a whole bunch and then they assign them as needed. So it doesn't necessarily speak to the age by the CVE number. I didn't actually see the dates when these were released. I don't know if that's in there. In any case, continue, Shani.
No.
Roy.
This is
Okay,
fun.
so yeah, we all are guessing, and we have a tie here, and we're not really sure what to do first, right? Which one to start with, and let's proceed to using the full CVSS score. So now we'll be using the same example, but I added the information that would help us, receive the temporal and the environmental scores. Oh, so this is interesting, right? So I manually went to Metasploit and ExploitDB and checked if there's an exploit that exists, and for all of the vulnerabilities there is an exploit. I checked if there's a patch available. I went to every vendor's website and to find out if there is a patch or not. And I went to the security team and asked them what would be the impact on each of these assets in case an exploit would occur, and this is the information that I've received. Yeah, so now we have much better detailed information that can help us to prioritize. And if we'll go back to our cool calculator, we can even add these characteristics into here and see what happens. So if we'll choose, for example, the functional exploit code maturity, because there's a Metasploit, we'll choose the official fix, right? And we can confirm that there's the vulnerability really exists because there's a functional exploit code. So we'll now receive this 9.1 score. And if we'll listen to the security team and we'll ask what the impact is, and we'll receive that it's a low impact. So we are now down to 7.4. It's still a high score, but it's not the 9.8 we had using the base score. So are you ready to prioritize again? We can proceed to the next question.
Yeah, let's see if we can do a better job this time.
Yeah.
Okay, so how now would you would you prioritize your mitigation actions given this new information? I'm very excited to see what would be the answer now.
We're all doing math. Like, whoa.
Not like we haven't been doing this 20 years each.
Oh, what the hell? Guess.
Yeah, 6.2 is greater than 6. Okay, yep, got it. Sorry, last time I did math, it was in decibels or dB or dBm. So, yeah, the number closer to 0 was bigger. Oh, no, that makes my brain hurt.
Yeah, we need music when we're all taking the quizzes. Right? We need to fill our music.
Yeah.
Paul, sing. No, never mind.
No, don't. You don't want that.
No, it's
Good
almost
Lord, no.
over. It's over now.
Whoa, okay. So yeah, I guess some of you changed your mind, right? Because some earlier
us
showed
actually
the server
voted
number
some.
1 before the server number 2, right? And now either you patch only server number 2 or you start with it, right? So the tie we had is now differentiated, right? So I guess that there's using this method of the full CVSS vulnerability is really crucial for us, right? And now the security team can't really sit down and gather all this information and keep it up to date because it changes over time, right? So there are tools
What's also
out
funny,
there
Shani, I think influencing it is that like my first IT job, we're talking in the 90s, I had servers named Server 1, Server 2, and Server 3. And like Server 1 was really important because it was the first one and it was like way more important than the rest. So that was like confusing me. I had to like put that out of my brain for a minute.
Okay, so yeah, also the names. We don't even know what is the goal of these servers, right? So that's a good question to ask, and I think it leads us to what we think in Vicarious, that the full CVSS score is amazing, and organizations should use tools that provide them with this full CVSS score, and even leverage these characteristics and add some characteristics, some new characteristics, such as, for example, how the publicity of every vulnerability, how many tags can we find on Twitter, on security feeds, other characteristics we can add. We can implement machine learning models that predict what would be the time to exploit, right? So you earlier said about the time that the vulnerability was published, but if we can predict how longer would it take in order to an exploit to be published, we can choose to fix first the ones with the closer date, right? So that would be really awesome.
Shani, just to bring it up to a higher level for one moment, is that there's the base CVSS score, then there's the temporal and environmental. But even with those extra fields that we can use the first website to go calculate those, right? It still begs a lot of questions. Like for me, I forget it. I think it was server 2, right, that had the highest environmental score, but there's no patch available. So I'm like, is there a workaround? And I know we covered virtual patching in the Vicarious platform. There's a plug for you guys as well in the previous segment. But it's not just whether an exploit exists or not. Is there a workaround? Not just a patch or not. Is there a workaround? How long before there will be a patch? Also, I think one of the other things for me is what type of vulnerability is it, right? Is it because for me, a race condition is different from, like a heat-based buffer overflow, for example, right? Like those are race conditions usually take a lot more time and rely on conditions to exist. So I'm going to factor that into my score. And Shani, what I hear you saying is that you folks at Vicarious take into account those other things that are going through all of our brains that we would take into account.
Right. So what I'm saying that we can either leverage the CVSS score, and this is good, but we also believe, as you just said, that it's not enough, right? That we want to add even more information, and let's go to the next example where I can add some new information for you guys. And this is just a little taste of what would be in the next session, where we would really drive into all these information that we can gather, all these surrounding information, stuff that are not exactly into the vulnerability, right? And let's look now on the second server, the one that was scored the highest, right? So if I'll tell you that it's actually a production server and the vulnerable app is used very highly and runs with high privileges, we definitely want to patch this first, right? So it's a good decision for us to make, and now we're even more sure about our decision. And on the other hand, if we look on the first server, the one that started with a 9.8 using just the base score, but after adding the environmental characteristics, it went down to 7.4, right? And I would tell you that it's a testing server, and the vulnerable app that is used very barely used, right? And it's not running with high privileges. So I'll proceed to my next question to you guys. Would you reconsider? Would you now, if you know this information, reconsider your decisions? Maybe you would prefer to put, your time in different vulnerabilities. So that's my question to you now. Paul, what are your thoughts?
I think on the servers, it's clear for me, and I won't kind of spoil it, but the desktops is interesting, right? Because while one could be a standard desktop and one's a management desktop, like my thoughts are, what if that standard desktop is the assistant to the CEO, right?
Yep.
That Tyler and Larry are like, yeah, that is absolutely 100% our target, right? So I may actually prioritize those either the same or even give a little kind of higher priority to the standard desktop if that person is like the assistant for the CEO, for example.
I think that's the hard part with exploits and vulnerabilities, right, is taking that objective approach where it is simply looking at a vulnerability or an exploit versus looking at what an attacker is targeting with inside of a business. What's the business risk? And therefore, maybe you don't have to get domain admin, or you don't have to get to a prod server for the crown jewels. Maybe you want IP or intellectual knowledge or insider trading knowledge, which may be just the assistant to the the CEO that's going to have those communications, the merger and acquisition communications coming in. So those are the things that, like as an attacker and as a business, taking that whole view away from just exploitation and vulnerabilities becomes very difficult.
Yep. See, I was one of those that didn't change their mind on this one. Specifically for the reason that I find that those testing stuff, while it says it's testing, it could have live data on it, the de-anonymized data. It could be tied to the domain just like a regular server, because it's got to have all the access to test those access control mechanisms. And
or even better, the testing server doesn't have sysmon enabled in the monitoring, but the production server does. Therefore, I want to patch my test server first, right? That's great.
So yeah, for all of those reasons,
to get caught.
Yep. So
yeah, okay. So I really like your answer, and I would like to add a piece of extra information. So let's look at that vulnerability that was ranked the lowest through all the scores, right? The one that exists on the management team. And I'll let you know that it's the vulnerable app is actually Chrome, and it's highly used, and it's used on 80% of the assets in the organization, and they all highly use it. And for no good reason, it's running with high privileges. So now my question would be, and we saw that it has a patch, this Chrome, right? So we can, with one operation, fix or mitigate huge risk and put a huge impact on the organization's security. Would you now maybe prioritize this patch before the testing server with the AnyDesk that is used barely?
Well, yeah, especially if it's Chrome, right? It is
so
already.
Now, wait, we have another question.
Oh. I was going to spoil the answer. I was going to point out.
Larry, get that mute button of Paul's quick.
I was just going to say
it's hard to reach. It's on the wrong side.
Chrome also is so would you prioritize it differently? All right, so I'm going to give my answer, and then just say Chrome already eats up most of the CPU on most people's computers. So when I exploit it, if it is the exploit is causing it to eat CPU, people are going to be like, it's totally normal, totally fine. Chrome, that's expected behavior, right?
Yeah, it impacts the availability,
Yep.
So, but the thing about it is where are you at in terms of your enterprise in terms of patching commodity desktop software like the browser? For me, that's a click a button and everybody gets the update one. So I don't spend any time on that.
But you did spend time on that to come up with that enterprise-wide patching solution, so it was a priority.
Yeah. 10 years ago.
It was a priority 10 years ago, and I'd argue that the fact that you still have it and you still use it, it is still a priority, that you are at a priority stage, you can click that button. So it's just another way to look at it, I suppose.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, stuff like that, I mean, I don't care whose desktop it is, that you treat them all the same.
Yeah, reboot them right in the middle. Bam.
Well, you'll be surprised.
No,
I communicate.
I don't agree with that, though.
No.
Okay.
You'll be surprised how many desktops, how many companies that we speak with, they got this HR and finance department that are, they cannot be touched because for some reason they need to have Internet Explorer 8 for, I don't know what's the good cause, but there is
payroll. Everyone wants to get paid, right? And if you move on with that browser, no one gets paid. So everyone's like, no, you leave them alone.
Actually, some of the payrolls got modernized. They have now a specific Chrome version. They cannot upgrade.
So they've gone from Internet Explorer to Chrome, right?
Yeah, but they got stuck. But it's a good point. Look, we went through a journey during this session where we started off the base score of the CVE, right? Like an 8, a 7, and this was like a kind of a straightforward. Everyone I prioritize based on 8 and above, 9 and above. You just said it also towards the middle. You said maybe if it's a race condition, it will be less likely to be abused based on your own personal perspective. And I think this discussion must be held. Again, we don't have the right tools. Usually when you scan, you get you get the static properties of the vulnerability, and you try to do your best according to that, because no one got the time now to go and to check every instance. I'm not saying every vulnerability, but every instance of a vulnerability on any given device, to go and check what are the CIA, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It's tough. I don't imagine anyone doing it, manually, so to speak, even on some extent, like a semi-automated way, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, compared to the traditional patching stuff we're talking about, doesn't your virtual patching turn the equation of the impact of patching on its head as well?
Definitely. Even though it's an interesting question, we just saw before in the calculator that the fact there is a patch reduces the risk, but does it? It's like an open question, because the fact that there is a fix, but you haven't deployed it yet, does it reduce the risk? So the fact there is our own patches protection mechanism, that it exists, so there is an ability to deploy that, will that alone, that unique characteristic will reduce the risk? Even though there is a mitigation. What do you think?
It should, but what I was thinking, reminded of as we're having the conversation, is a few years ago, there were some problems with IE, and we simply blocked it at the perimeter. You couldn't use IE to get to the internet because of the particular vulnerabilities, and because of the amount of people that had to stay there for whatever legacy reason. So, we put a filter in and reduced the risk. Was it zero? No, there's no such thing, but we changed it.
I wonder if anyone would have done an internal penetration test and find that version. And keep in mind, it's a pen tester without, the context of the company. Probably in the report, you would see this Internet Explorer as something that is ranked high, because probably, he needs to send away something. And you probably are going to disregard it. But this is because that you did this confiscating control.
I'm still gonna email your users an HTML document and hope they open it in the IE.
Oh yeah.
But Lee admitted, he's like, no, it's not perfect. It does reduce the risk. I agree, Lee, with your assessment wholeheartedly. It doesn't wipe it out completely just because you've blocked it from accessing the internet. Yeah.
Somebody could tell me. I could see somebody telling us in our Discord channel that I just kicked the can down the road. that's not the total fix. That's reducing the risk for today so you can operate while you get the long-term fix in place.
But what I really like, because Roy and Shani, right, you've built this into your product, right? This whole discussion that we've had, right, for this whole segment where we've brought up all these different aspects about how do we prioritize, how do we know how to categorize the threat, how to score the threat, score the risk, all of that stuff. You've thought about this a lot and built this as a critical component to your product, right? Because I can vulnerability scan, I can do the patchless protection that we talked about on previous segments. And now this third component is helping us prioritize, right? Because those first two things are great, but if you don't have the prioritization, they don't really mean as much, right?
Exactly. We don't want to send you on a goose chase and basically try to patch and patchlessly protect everything. Obviously, everything needs to be aligned with the risk properties of the company. And I think, without stealing the thunder of the next session,
sure.
The ability to really take these additional properties, like the context, where the application is being ran at, how it's being ran. I always like, when I speak with the potential clients, I always tell them, like imagine every vulnerability, it's like a recipe for a cake, right? Imagine you have a recipe for a cake. You need to have, to some cakes, you need to have some dough, you need to have some sugar, maybe yeast, depends on the type of the cake. But in any case, you have the recipe. And if the ingredients don't exist on the computer you're running, on the application you're using, on the environment. So in fact, it's most likely or very hard to exploit that. And we need to have the right tools which check for these ingredients, which validate continuously all of the different aspects. And we can have, and this is a true story, where you have a server which on the first day was designated as a testing, and on the other day suddenly become a production because of, who knows, multiple reasons. So you need to have the right technology, the right tools, to try that out, to validate it all the time, and eventually get a precise indication what are the most critical things you should be dealing with. So again, on the next session, we're going to discuss it more to elaborate that. But if you don't want to wait until then, you're welcome to have a free trial for 30 days. Offer vicarious.io/sign up. So I welcome you to give it a go, give it a spin, and see what we can find and prioritize on your environment. But again, I think it's a very crucial part of vulnerability management, how you prioritize effectively based on the company properties and not external feeds and external inputs.
Yeah, what I like, and I think what we really explored in this segment was how subjective it can be to prioritize vulnerabilities, right? Yep. And Roy, I think that's in your messaging, right? You provide that objective. We'll talk about it next time, how you provide that objective view of what you should prioritize over, the most, basically, when it comes to vulnerability prioritization. And even having worked in vulnerability management, sometimes even I need to be reminded just how subjective it really is, and how oftentimes it's sometimes it's just a feeling like, oh, my gut tells me I should patch this stuff first, right? And that's not always the right answer.
Yeah, you won't tell me why I should patch that. I know. Yeah, this is basically what we're getting. So people are like saying, trust me, I know what I'm doing, and kind of. And it's funny because you're going to ask them on the next day and they're going to get a different answer. They're trying to guess the way to success.
Outstanding. Well, Shani and Roy, thank you so much. That was a lot of fun too. I love the Kahoot thing. I thought that was really fun and engaging. So folks that want to learn more, you can go to Vicarious' website, or you can go to securityweekly.com/vicarious. You'll see all the segments that the fine folks at Vicarious have done here on Security Weekly, and be able to register for a trial. Again, Roy and Shani, thank you so much for appearing on Paul Security Weekly.
Thank you so much.
Well, with that, we'll take a short break and come back with the next segment. Stay tuned.